Just 17 days after my husband died, my own son called. He told me he'd sold my car, Robert's car, and put the money in an account he controlled. My voice shook, but I heard a cold, calculating tone in his. He thought he'd taken my independence, left me stranded. He was wrong. Something far darker was just beginning. Like, share, and let us know where you're listening from. This story is just getting started. Eleanor, a 58-year-old widow, her dark brown hair streaked with elegant silver, answered the phone. She was bone-tired, the kind of exhaustion that seeped into your bones after a 12-hour shift at the hospital, where every second was a battle against the inevitable. It was her son, Ethan, in his early 30s, a man whose sharp intellect was often overshadowed by an even sharper ambition. He was image-conscious, always perfectly put together, and right now his voice held an almost unnerving casualness. "Mom," he began, without preamble, "I sold your car." Eleanor froze, the receiver suddenly heavy in her hand. The mug of herbal tea she'd been nursing, meant to soothe her frayed nerves, clattered against the kitchen counter. "Ethan, what did you say?" Her voice, usually a steady, comforting murmur, was now a fractured whisper of disbelief. Had her grief-addled mind misheard? He sighed, a sound of mild impatience that grated on her already raw emotions. "I sold Robert's old Toyota, Mom. No, the 10-year-old one. Got $8,000 for it. Already put it into an account." He paused, and Eleanor felt a prickle of unease. "An account I control, of course, for your benefit." "My benefit?" The words tasted like ash. Robert. Her Robert. The car had been his, a sturdy, reliable companion through years of family drives and mundane errands. Now it was gone, vanished without her consent, without even a conversation. Just 17 days. It had only been 17 days since they lowered Robert into the cold earth, and her son had already begun to dismantle the remnants of her life. "You need to be practical now that Dad's gone," Ethan continued, his voice devoid of any genuine empathy, sounding more like a CEO delivering a quarterly report than a son speaking to his grieving mother. "Things are different now." Eleanor gripped the cold granite counter, her knuckles turning white. Her mind raced, a frantic scramble to make sense of his audacious betrayal. "But I need that car for work, Ethan. The hospital, it's across town. How am I supposed to get there?" The words tumbled out, desperate, laced with a fear she hadn't realized was bubbling beneath the surface. Her job, her patience, her routine, they were the only anchors left in the storm of her sorrow. Again, that dismissive sigh. "Mom, be realistic. You're 58. Should you even be working such long shifts anymore? It's time to consider a different pace of life." He then proceeded to dictate a long, convoluted bus route, listing transfers and waiting times with the air of a benevolent dictator. "Besides," he added, a cruel afterthought, "the exercise will be good for you." The line clicked, the abrupt dial tone a physical blow. He had hung up, just like that, leaving her in the stunned silence of her kitchen. The magnitude of his presumption, his unforgivable act, sinking in like a cold, heavy stone. It wasn't just the car, it was more than $8,000, more than the inconvenience of public transport. In those few chilling minutes, Ethan had stolen her independence, stripped away her autonomy, leaving her feeling exposed and vulnerable. A tremor ran through her, a cold dread that had nothing to do with the lingering chill of grief, and everything to do with the predatory gleam in her son's eyes that she now recognized, even over the phone. A dark, unsettling feeling began to take root in her stomach, a premonition that this was only the beginning. Eleanor sank heavily into the nearest kitchen chair, the plastic seat cold against her clammy skin. The silence in the house, once a comforting blanket, now felt like a suffocating shroud, amplifying the echo of Ethan's callous words. She missed Robert, missed his steady presence, his quiet strength that would have immediately cut through such a blatant act of disrespect. He would have known what to do, what to say. He always did. A profound, aching emptiness settled in her chest, a physical manifestation of his absence. Then a sudden, sharp memory pierced through the haze of her grief. Robert, their 30th anniversary, just a few months ago. He'd surprised her with a small, intimate dinner. And then, with a twinkle in his eye, he'd presented her with a new car title. He'd transferred the Toyota, his beloved, reliable 10-year-old Toyota, solely into her name. "So you'll always have a way to get around, my love," he'd said, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "It's yours, completely." Her heart hammered against her ribs. If the car was legally hers, how could Ethan have sold it? Unless he had the original title. She sprang from the chair, a new, frantic energy coursing through her veins. She rushed to Robert's old filing cabinet, a sturdy metal behemoth in the spare room that held all their important documents. She fumbled with the key, her fingers trembling, and pulled open the drawer labeled Automotive. Her breath hitched. It was empty. The entire folder, registration, insurance, the precious car title, gone. A chilling realization washed over her, colder than any grief she'd yet felt last week. Ethan had offered to help organize Robert's affairs, saying he wanted to make sure everything was in order for her. She had been too deep in her sorrow, too trusting. He'd taken the documents then, under the guise of compassion. This wasn't impulsive. This was calculated. A meticulous, predatory move. Just as the full weight of this betrayal settled upon her, her phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. It was a screenshot of a complicated bus schedule, a spiderweb of routes and transfers that would turn her 20-minute drive to the hospital into an hour and a half, at best. "See, Mom," the accompanying message read. "Plenty of options. The exercise will be good for you." And then another line, a casual suggestion that struck her like a physical blow. "I can probably get a decent price for Robert's tools, too. You don't use them, do you?" Robert's tools, his sacred workshop. The very idea made her stomach churn. Grief, that heavy, immobilizing cloak, began to transform. It sharpened, solidified, hardening into a cold, clear anger. An anger unlike anything she'd ever known. Robert wouldn't want her to simply accept this, to sit by and let Ethan strip away her life piece by piece. Robert, with his fierce sense of justice, would want her to stand up for herself. She took a deep breath, her mind racing, not with sorrow, but with resolve. There was one person she knew who could help. She scrolled through her contacts and found the name. Martha, Robert's oldest friend and a formidable attorney, known for her sharp mind and even sharper tongue. Eleanor dialed, her voice steady now, though a tremor still ran through her. "Martha," she began, "it's Eleanor. I need to know something. Is there any way to get into the Toyota's glove compartment without actually having the car?" Martha, 72 with a formidable silver bun and an equally formidable reputation, arrived at Eleanor's doorstep less than an hour later. Her eyes, usually sparkling with wit, were narrowed with concern. After Eleanor, her voice now brimming with a quiet fury, laid out Ethan's actions. Martha's expression hardened. "He did what?" Martha demanded, her voice rising in righteous indignation, echoing the silent fury that had begun to burn within Eleanor. Eleanor watched Martha pace Eleanor's living room, the older woman's outrage, a fierce wind buffeting the quiet despair in the room. "He claims he put the money into an account for me," Eleanor explained, her voice flat, the bitterness sharp on her tongue. $8,000, for my benefit, he said. Martha stopped, her sharp gaze pinning Eleanor. "An account you don't control, I'm guessing. One he has sole access to." It wasn't a question, but a statement of chilling certainty. Eleanor could only nod, a flush of shame creeping up her neck. She had been so trusting, so naive in her grief. How could she have allowed her son to manipulate her so easily? The question burned, a fresh wound. Martha's expression hardened further. "Eleanor, this isn't just inappropriate, it's illegal. The Toyota was legally in your name, wasn't it? Robert transferred the title to you for your anniversary." A flicker of hope ignited within Eleanor. "Yes, he did, but Ethan took the papers from the filing cabinet." As she spoke, another memory surfaced, a small but persistent detail that Robert, ever the meticulous planner, always adhered to. Robert always kept duplicate papers, important ones, insurance, registration. He always had copies in the glove compartment of the car, just in case. Martha's eyes, sharp and intelligent, widened slightly. "The glove compartment," she murmured, a thoughtful frown creasing her brow. She went quiet for a moment, her mind clearly working through the implications. Then she took a deep breath. Eleanor, there's something else. Something Robert asked me to hold for you. Eleanor's heart gave a lurch. What are you talking about? Martha walked over to her briefcase, a worn leather satchel that had seen countless legal battles. She opened it and pulled out a thick, sealed manila envelope. About 3 months ago, Robert came to see me. He was concerned. He mentioned some heart palpitations, a little fatigue. Nothing too serious, he said, but he wanted to be prepared. Martha's voice softened. He didn't want to worry you, not with everything else you had on your plate. He just wanted to make sure you were taken care of, no matter what. Eleanor's hands began to tremble as Martha handed her the envelope. It felt heavy, pregnant with untold secrets. Robert, ever the protector, even in foresight. Martha had been right. He hadn't wanted to burden her. Inside, Eleanor found a folded letter, its creases crisp and a small, tarnished brass key, a safe deposit box key. Her fingers traced the elegant script of Robert's handwriting on the envelope. For Eleanor, my dearest love, to be opened only if I'm not here. A fresh wave of grief, mingled with a profound sense of Robert's enduring love, washed over her. He had been planning, preparing, even as he faced his own mortality. He had been looking out for her, even from beyond the grave. I'll make some calls, Martha announced, her voice snapping Eleanor back to the present. She pulled out her phone, her fingers flying across the keypad. My DMV contacts are usually pretty good. We need to find that car. Eleanor watched her, a sliver of hope starting to form amidst the turmoil. Minutes later, Martha returned, a triumphant glint in her eyes. Good news, Eleanor, the car hasn't been re-registered yet. Whoever bought it hasn't completed the paperwork. That gives us a window. It means the legal ownership is still murky, and we might be able to intercept it before it disappears completely. The thought of retrieving Robert's duplicate papers, locked away in the glove compartment, now seemed like a tangible goal. A way to reclaim what was hers, and perhaps uncover what Robert had wanted her to find. Martha's phone call had yielded immediate results. The car was sold to a Dr. Thomas Grant in Boulder, she announced, her voice crisp with satisfaction. For his daughter, Chloe. Looks like a clean transaction on his end. He likely had no idea what Ethan was doing. This news, though a relief, only deepened Eleanor's fury at her son's deception. He hadn't just stolen from her. He had involved an unsuspecting third party. First thing the next morning, Martha, ever the efficient operator, drove Eleanor the hour and a half to Boulder. The crisp mountain air did little to calm Eleanor's churning stomach, a mix of anxiety and burgeoning hope. They arrived at a tasteful 2-story home, and Dr. Grant, a tall man with kind, empathetic eyes, answered the door. When Martha, with her usual directness, explained the situation, Dr. Grant's face clouded with concern. He listened intently, his expression shifting from surprise to profound regret. I had no idea, he said, his voice genuinely apologetic. Mr. Thorne presented himself as the executor of the estate, stated his mother no longer needed the vehicle. He seemed perfectly legitimate. He looked at Eleanor, his gaze compassionate. Please, Mrs. Thorne, accept my deepest apologies. This is an awful situation. I understand how vulnerable that time can be after losing a spouse. Without a moment's hesitation, he handed Martha the keys. Take the car. I couldn't possibly keep it under these circumstances. And please, don't worry about reimbursement. Consider it my contribution to setting things right. Eleanor felt a wave of relief so profound it almost buckled her knees. The weight of the world lifted, just a fraction. She took the keys, her fingers closing around the familiar metal. Walking towards the Toyota, her heart thrummed with anticipation. As she opened the door and slid into the driver's seat, the familiar scent enveloped her. A subtle blend of leather, faint dust, and Robert's aftershave. A phantom comfort, a visceral connection to the man she loved. Tears pricked her eyes, but this time they weren't solely tears of grief, but of profound gratitude and a burgeoning strength. Martha, observing Eleanor's emotional reunion with the car, suggested, "Let's pull over at that scenic overlook up ahead. You'll want some privacy for this, I imagine." Eleanor nodded, her throat tight. She drove slowly, carefully, her hands trembling on the steering wheel, to a secluded spot overlooking the majestic Rocky Mountains. The vast expanse of nature, usually a source of peace, now seemed to hold its breath with her. She took a deep, fortifying breath and, with a trembling hand, opened the glove compartment. There it was, a sealed manila envelope, exactly as she had imagined. On it, in Robert's unmistakable, elegant script, were the words, "For Eleanor, urgent." Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the quiet car. She tore open the seal, her fingers fumbling with a mix of dread and anticipation. Inside, she found not just the duplicate car title and registration she had hoped for, but something far more significant. A small, sleek USB drive, a stack of meticulously organized legal documents, and another longer letter, also in Robert's handwriting. She opened the letter first, her eyes scanning the familiar loops and flourishes of his script. Her vision blurred, but she forced herself to focus. Robert's words unfolded a story she had never known, a secret life he had meticulously built for them, for her. My dearest Eleanor, if you are reading this, then I am no longer with you in person. But please know, my love, my heart is always with you. I know this will come as a shock, but there are things I kept quiet to protect our peace, and perhaps to surprise you when the time was right. For 30 years, ever since we married, I have been making investments, quietly, steadily, with every spare penny and every smart opportunity. All of it, darling, has been for you. Every single asset is held under a company I established, Winter Mechanics LLC, and its sole owner, its beneficiary, is you. Eleanor gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Winter Mechanics? Robert had loved working on engines, a quiet hobby he pursued in their garage. She had always thought it was just a whimsical name he used for his own private accounts. The portfolio currently includes 17 residential properties across various states, 4 commercial buildings, including the entire Aspen Heights luxury apartments complex downtown, and a diversified stock portfolio. I wanted to ensure you would never have to worry, not a single day, about money or security. Everything is detailed on the enclosed USB drive and in the accompanying documents. Martha has instructions on accessing bank accounts and legal counsel, should you need it. Eleanor stared at the words, her mind reeling. 17 residential properties? 4 commercial buildings? The Aspen Heights luxury apartments? The complex, gleaming, and exclusive dominated a significant portion of the city skyline. Robert had driven past it countless times, sometimes pointing it out with a wry smile. She had always thought he was simply admiring the architecture. Now the full, breathtaking scope of his secret life's work began to dawn on her, leaving her utterly speechless. If you're as stunned as I am by Robert's secret, then you won't want to miss what happens next. Make sure to like this video, share it with someone who needs a good story, and subscribe so you don't miss a single part of this unfolding drama. Eleanor reread the words, including the Aspen Heights luxury apartments, her breath catching in her throat. Aspen Heights, Ethan lived there. Her son, who had so casually stripped her of her independence, lived in her building paying rent that unknowingly flowed into her accounts. The irony, the sheer breathtaking audacity of it was almost comical, if not for the sting of his betrayal. She continued to read, her eyes wide, scanning the numbers Robert had painstakingly detailed. The portfolio, he wrote, was currently valued at an astounding $4.7 million, generating a conservative estimate of $78,000 in passive income every single month. $78,000. A sum so vast it almost didn't feel real. Her entire nursing salary, after working tirelessly for decades, paled in comparison to the monthly income from Robert's secret empire. Robert's letter softened then, a familiar tenderness seeping through his precise financial language. My love, I know this is a lot to take in, and I apologize deeply for keeping it from you. I wanted to surprise you, to present it all when we retired, a secure future we could enjoy together without a single worry. I wanted to see your face when you realized every dream we ever whispered about was within reach. I arranged for a reliable management company, Reliable Properties, to handle everything, ensuring discretion and seamless operation. Susan Chen, a wonderful woman who has been with me since the beginning, runs the show. Her real name is Sarah Lee, but she prefers to go by Susan professionally. A profound realization dawned on Eleanor. Robert hadn't just been building an empire, he had been building a fortress to protect her, to provide for her, and perhaps to shield her from the very materialism and entitlement He must have seen budding in their son Ethan. You knew, Eleanor whispered, looking at Martha, who had been quietly observing her. You knew about all of this, didn't you? Martha nodded, a gentle smile gracing her lips. Yes, Eleanor. Robert came to me when he first set up Winter Mechanics LLC. He insisted on absolute secrecy, said it was a surprise for you, a legacy. He wanted to ensure your future was secure, no matter what. There was a subtle emphasis on no matter what, and Eleanor understood. Robert had foreseen, or at least feared, the possibility of Ethan's actions, and he had taken measures to safeguard her. Her love for him deepened, if that were even possible, a poignant mix of grief for his loss and awe at his foresight. They drove back home in a daze, Eleanor clutching the USB drive and documents like precious jewels. The familiar landscape of her town now seemed to hum with a different energy, as if the secret she carried had transformed it. When they arrived, her phone buzzes. A text from Ethan. Mom, did you think about Robert's tools? I really think we should list them soon. Strike while the iron's hot. Eleanor looked at the message, her earlier anger now replaced by a chilling resolve. She simply ignored it. Her son unknowingly was trying to pick at the crumbs while she held the keys to the entire feast. Later that evening, after Martha had left with promises of immediate legal action regarding Ethan's fraudulent car sale, Eleanor, her hands steady now, inserted the USB drive into her computer. The folders glowed on the screen, a meticulously organized digital archive of Robert's 30 years of quiet dedication. Every property, every investment, every financial transaction was detailed with an almost obsessive precision. There were even personal notes, small handwritten digital files tucked into various folders. Each one was a testament to his dreams, his love for her, and his vision for their future. One folder in particular caught her eye, Eleanor's dreams. She clicked on it, her heart swelling. Inside were scanned images of travel brochures to places she had always yearned to visit. The ancient ruins of Machu Picchu, the bustling markets of Marrakesh, the serene fjords of Norway. There were notes about funding scholarships for aspiring young artists, sketches of renovations for their modest home, expanding the garden she loved, adding a sunroom with a view. It was all there, every wistful wish she had ever shared, remembered and meticulously planned for. Robert hadn't just heard her dreams, he had quietly built the means to make them a reality. And now, armed with this incredible inheritance, Eleanor knew exactly what she had to do. The doorbell chimed, a sharp, insistent sound that cut through the quiet hum of Eleanor's new reality. She knew who it was. The moment had arrived. Taking a steadying breath, she walked to the door and opened it to find Ethan standing on her porch, a mixture of anger and confusion wearing on his face. His perfectly tailored suit seemed to bristle with his agitation. Mom, he began, his voice tight, barely containing his fury. The car is back. Dr. Grant just called me, completely out of the blue, saying it was all a misunderstanding. But what the hell did you do? Want to explain how that happened? Eleanor met his gaze, no longer shrinking from his accusations, no longer allowing grief to cloud her judgment. The immense weight of Robert's love, his foresight, and the knowledge of her true wealth had solidified her resolve. She straightened her shoulders, a quiet strength emanating from her. I think you're the one who owes me an explanation, Ethan, she said, her voice calm, remarkably steady. You sold property that wasn't yours to sell. The Toyota was legally mine. Ethan blinked, momentarily taken aback by her uncharacteristic assertiveness. He had clearly expected tears, confusion, perhaps even a defensive outburst. Instead, he found a woman who, though grieving, was utterly composed. He quickly recovered, a condescending smirk playing on his lips. Mom, really? We've talked about this. You're emotional right now. Dad's passing has hit you hard. I was just trying to handle the practical matters, lighten your load. That car was old, a liability. I made a smart financial decision for you. He gestured dismissively with a hand. Besides, Martha, of all people inserting herself into this, she's a busy woman. She doesn't have time for this nonsense. Eleanor felt a cold fury, sharper than anything she'd felt before. His dismissal of her feelings, his casual disregard for her autonomy, his audacity to call her car a liability after selling it illegally, It was all too much. My emotional state is irrelevant to the fact that you committed an illegal act, she stated, her voice unwavering. And Martha is a dear friend who, unlike you, actually cares about my well-being and legal rights. He scoffed, then leaned in, lowering his voice conspiratorially, as if she were a child who needed placating. Look, Mom, this is about your future. Dad's gone. Things have changed. You need to downsize. I've been thinking, with the house and your age, it might be time for you to consider a nice senior living community. Less upkeep, good social activities. Eleanor stared at him, aghast. A senior living community? He was planning to sell her home, the sanctuary she'd shared with Robert for decades, and move her into an assisted living facility at 58 years old. He truly saw her as a burden, someone to be managed, controlled. I'm 58, Ethan, she said, each word precise and deliberate. I am perfectly capable of living in my own home, working my own job, and making my own decisions. I'm not ready for a senior living community, nor am I interested in one. Mom, be reasonable, he started, his patience clearly wearing thin. You don't understand these things. It's for your own good. I'm just trying to make sure you're taken care of. What I need from you, Eleanor interjected, cutting him off with a firmness that surprised even herself, is respect for my autonomy and my property, not your unsolicited, condescending guidance. Just then, Ethan's phone chimed. He glanced at it, his brows furrowing. Building inspection. Next week for Aspenee Heights, he muttered, more to himself than to her. A tiny, almost imperceptible smile tugged at the corner of Eleanor's lips. Her building. She knew all about that inspection. Susan Chen had scheduled it days ago. And while we're on the subject of my property, Eleanor continued, pressing her advantage, Robert's tools are not for sale, not now, not ever. They are sentimental, and they are mine. And I expect you to provide me with the details of the account where you deposited the proceeds from the car sale immediately. I will be transferring that money to my own account. Ethan stared at her, genuinely stunned by her transformation. His mother, always so gentle, so accommodating, was standing before him, radiating an unwavering resolve he'd never witnessed. The carefully constructed image of his easily manipulated mother was crumbling before his eyes. He fumbled for his phone, his confident demeanor having entirely evaporated. Fine, he mumbled, his voice uncharacteristically small. I'll text you the details. He quickly typed something, sent it, and then, without another word, turned and walked stiffly off the porch, leaving Eleanor in the quiet aftermath of their first true confrontation. He left baffled, bewildered by the sudden, inexplicable shift in his mother's demeanor. He had no idea the true extent of the game he had just entered. The morning after her confrontation with Ethan, Eleanor felt a lightness she hadn't experienced in weeks, a sense of purpose that pushed aside the lingering shadows of grief. She had an appointment with Sarah Lee, the manager of Reliable Properties, the woman Robert had entrusted with his entire empire. Sarah, a sharp, impeccably dressed woman with a warm, no-nonsense demeanor, greeted Eleanor at the sleek, modern offices of Reliable Properties. Mrs. Thorne, she said, her smile genuine, it's an honor to finally meet you. Robert spoke of you often with such profound admiration. He was truly a remarkable man. Eleanor felt a pang of bittersweet emotion. He was, she agreed, her voice soft. Sarah wasted no time, diving straight into the comprehensive briefing. She presented Eleanor with a neatly bound portfolio detailing every single asset, the 17 residential properties, a diverse mix of single-family homes, townhouses, and smaller apartment complexes spread across various neighborhoods, and the 4 commercial buildings, each generating impressive, steady income. The sheer scale of Robert's foresight, his quiet, decades-long dedication, was overwhelming. And of course, Sarah continued, turning a page, the crown jewel, Aspen Heights, the entire complex, Mrs. Thorne, is yours. Every unit, every amenity, every square foot. She paused, then added, a knowing glint in her eye. Which brings us to your son, Ethan. Yes, he resides in Unit 14B. He pays his rent on time, to us, of course, completely unaware of the true ownership. Eleanor couldn't help but crack a small, almost imperceptible smile. The thought of Ethan living in her building, contributing to her income, was a delicious piece of cosmic justice. However, Sarah's expression turned slightly more professional. There have been a few incidents. Mr. Thorne has a history of noise complaints from his neighbors, particularly late-night entertaining. There have also been several parking violations. He often parks in unauthorized visitor spots, sometimes blocking access. And unfortunately, he's developed a bit of an entitled attitude toward the building staff. He tends to be quite demanding, often treating them as his personal assistants rather than property management employees. Eleanor listened, her smile fading, replaced by a deep sigh. It wasn't surprising, but it was disheartening. Ethan's arrogance wasn't just reserved for his family. "I'd like to see it," Eleanor stated, her voice firm. "Aspen Heights, I'd like a property tour. Start with the most significant aspects, the common areas, and perhaps a vacant unit or two." She carefully omitted any mention of Unit 14B, though the knowledge of Ethan's tenancy lingered in her mind. As they concluded their initial meeting, Sarah reached into her desk drawer and pulled out a small, velvet-covered box. "One more thing, Mrs. Thorne. Robert left this with me, with strict instructions to give it to you when you first took over the reins." Eleanor opened the box to find a delicate gold key pendant, studded with tiny sparkling diamonds. It was exquisite, elegant. She recognized the engraving on the back. "You've always held the key to my heart. Now you hold the keys to our future. Always are." Tears pricked her eyes again, a fresh wave of grief, but also a profound sense of love and gratitude. Robert's last, most beautiful gesture. As Sarah drove Eleanor to Aspen Heights, Eleanor weighed her options. She could, of course, confront Ethan immediately, reveal her ownership, and watch his world crumble. But something held her back. She wanted him to understand, truly understand, the boundaries he had crossed, the respect he had forfeited. She wanted him to feel the slow burn of consequence, not just the shock of a sudden revelation. She needed him to see her not as a frail, grieving mother, but as a woman of strength and resolve. This visit to Aspen Heights, her building, felt like the first step in a carefully orchestrated dance, a recalibration of their distorted relationship. She would observe, she would learn, and then, when the time was right, she would make her move. She would show Ethan that the game he thought he was playing, he had already lost, and it was only just beginning. The next morning, Eleanor drove herself to Aspen Heights, the familiar journey now infused with an entirely new significance. She wasn't just driving to a location. She was driving to her property, to a tangible manifestation of Robert's profound love and legacy. The gold key pendant, nestled beneath her sweater, felt warm against her skin, a constant reminder of the empire she now commanded. At Aspen Heights, she was greeted by Mr. Khan, the building manager, a polite, efficient man who gave her a professional tour of what he believed was just another interested party exploring a potential investment. He pointed out the state-of-the-art gym, the lavish communal lounge, the sprawling rooftop terrace with its panoramic city views. Eleanor listened attentively, asking insightful questions that surprised Mr. Khan, her mind processing not just the aesthetics, but the operational nuances of her building. "Could you show me where Unit 14B is located?" Eleanor asked casually as they walked down a well-lit corridor. She watched Mr. Khan's expression carefully. He paused for a moment, a flicker of hesitation in his eyes. "Ah, yes, Unit 14B, he said, his voice dropping slightly. "That's Mr. Thorne's apartment. It's just around this corner." He led her to the door. "Lovely unit, very desirable layout. Mr. Thorne is a valued tenant, of course," he added, a little too quickly. "Though, if I may, Mrs. Thorne, we have had a few minor issues, some noise complaints, mostly late-night gatherings, and occasionally he's been rather particular with the cleaning staff." He gave a discreet cough. "Nothing we can't handle, of course." Eleanor nodded, her face impassive. Mr. Khan's carefully chosen words confirmed Sarah Lee's earlier assessment. Ethan's entitlement wasn't an isolated incident. It was a consistent thread woven through every aspect of his life, from his mother to his building staff. He truly believed the rules didn't apply to him. Later that afternoon, as Eleanor was preparing a simple dinner, her phone buzzed with an incoming text. It was Ethan, his arrogance oozing through the digital message. "Mom, I need to talk to you about your financial situation. I'll be there at 7, and yes, we definitely need to talk." A summons, not an invitation. He still believed he was in control, that she was merely a problem to be managed. Eleanor immediately called Martha, recounting the details of her tour and Ethan's latest demand. "He thinks he's coming to set me straight," Eleanor explained, a steely edge to her voice. "Should I tell him, Martha? Should I just lay it all out?" Martha considered for a moment. "Eleanor, sometimes a slow burn is more effective than a sudden explosion. If he still thinks he has the upper hand, that gives you an advantage. Let him dig his own grave a little deeper. He'll understand the true impact of his actions much more profoundly when his delusions are systematically dismantled rather than shattered all at once." Eleanor agreed. Martha was right. She wanted Ethan to truly feel the consequences, not just be shocked by a revelation. At precisely 7 p.m., Ethan arrived, looking every bit the successful, condescending son he was. He barely waited for Eleanor to invite him in before launching into his usual spiel. "Mom, we need to be realistic about your future. I've been doing some calculations. Your hospital salary, with retirement looming, isn't going to cut it. And this house," he gestured around the living room with disdain, "it's far too large for one person. The upkeep alone is a drain. I think selling it, putting you into a more manageable, assisted living situation, is the only logical choice." Eleanor held up a hand, stopping him mid-sentence. "Ethan," she said, her voice clear and firm, "before we discuss my future, there's something I need to give you." She walked to the small table by the door and picked up a small, ornate silver dish. In it, nestled amongst some decorative pebbles, were 2 keys, his spare house keys. Keys he had likely forgotten he even had, keys that symbolized his unchecked access to her life. She held them out to him on her open palm. "These are your spare keys to this house. I've changed the security code on the alarm system, so they're no longer of any use to you." Ethan stared at the keys, then at his mother, his jaw dropping. He reached for them mechanically, his expression shifting from confusion to outrage. "What? Why would you do that, Mom? I'm your son. I'm supposed to have access." "You had access, Ethan, and you abused it," Eleanor countered, her gaze unwavering. "You entered my home, my private sanctuary, without my permission, and you stole property that belongs solely to me. That privilege is now revoked." "This is ridiculous," Ethan exclaimed, his face reddening. "Dad would have wanted me to look out for you. He knew you'd need guidance after he was gone. He always said you were too trusting, too naive when it came to business." Eleanor felt a pang of indignation, but it quickly solidified into determination. "I think," she said, her voice quiet but laced with an undeniable steel, "I knew your father better than you did, Ethan. And I assure you what he wanted was for me to be secure, protected, and independent, not to be dictated to by an ungrateful, self-serving son." Ethan, for the first time in his life, looked utterly speechless, completely out of his depth. The foundation of his perceived control had just been ripped out from under him, and he had no idea what to do. A week later, Eleanor's phone rang. It was Ethan, his voice tight with agitation. "Mom, you won't believe this. They're hitting me with a 30% rent increase at Aspen Heights. 30%! And now they're saying I have all these building inspection violations. Noise complaints, parking. It's insane. They're targeting me, Mom. Someone is clearly targeting me." Eleanor listened, her expression carefully neutral. "Targeting you, Ethan?" she finally responded, her voice calm. "Or perhaps you're simply experiencing the standard policy everyone else adheres to. Perhaps it's simply removing the special treatment you have come to expect." He sputtered, unable to formulate a coherent response, and eventually hung up in a fit of pique. Eleanor allowed herself a small, triumphant smile. The seeds of doubt and consequence were clearly taking root. The very next day, Ethan showed up at Eleanor's doorstep again, unannounced. This time he looked disheveled, his expensive suit rumpled, his hair a mess. His usual polished veneer had cracked, revealing the raw anxiety beneath. "Mom, you won't believe this," he practically wailed, pushing past her into the living room. "They're raising my rent by 30%, and all these fines for violations? It's absurd. I've always been a good tenant. There must be some mistake. Can you call someone? Use your connections?" Eleanor sat on the sofa, her posture relaxed, almost inviting. "Connections, Ethan? What connections do you imagine I have that would sway a property management company? She watched him, seeing his worldview laid bare. A world where rules were for others, where connections and privilege superseded accountability. Perhaps, she suggested gently, the management company is simply doing its job, ensuring all tenants adhere to the building's regulations. He ran a hand through his hair, clearly exasperated. But this is just unprecedented. I've never had issues before. He didn't realize he was admitting to years of preferential treatment, of being overlooked. Eleanor listened patiently, letting him vent, letting the weight of his self-imposed problems settle. She knew it was time for the final act. Ethan, she said, cutting through his litany of complaints, I actually called you to come over today for something else, not to discuss your rent situation. She paused, letting his confusion build. It's about Robert's tools. They're more important than either of us realized. I think you need to come out to the workshop with me. Confused but intrigued, Ethan followed her to the garage, which Robert had meticulously organized into a pristine workshop. The scent of sawdust and machine oil, usually a source of comfort for Eleanor, now felt charged with the impending revelation. Surrounded by Robert's meticulously arranged tools, each one a testament to his craftsmanship and patience, Eleanor picked up a worn, leather-bound journal from a workbench. Your father, she began, her voice imbued with a deep, resonant calm, was a man of many secrets. Not secrets born of malice, but of love, foresight, and a profound desire to protect the people he cared about. She handed him the journal. This is his. It's filled with letters, thoughts, and reflections on his life, and on his other work. Ethan took the journal, his brow furrowed with bewilderment. He flipped through the pages, seeing Robert's familiar handwriting. You see, Ethan, Eleanor continued, her gaze unwavering. For the past 30 years, your father wasn't just working his job. He was quietly building an empire, a real estate empire, 17 residential properties, 4 commercial buildings. And yes, Ethan, she paused, letting the full weight of her words land. The entire Espionage Heights luxury apartments complex, all of it held under a company called Winter Mechanics LLC, and every single asset, every penny, is legally and entirely mine. Ethan froze, the journal still in his hands. His eyes, initially wide with disbelief, slowly narrowed, then widened again as the realization hit him, washing over his face like a tidal wave. He thought of the noise complaints, the parking violations, the rent increase. He thought of her driving the old Toyota, of her hospital shifts, of his condescending lectures about her finances. He thought of the $8,000 he had stolen and the apartment he lived in. Her apartment. His world visibly crumbled around him, the arrogance draining from his face, replaced by a ghastly pallor. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. You've been paying below market rent in a building I own, Ethan, Eleanor finished, her voice clear, resolute. While you were suggesting I take the bus to work, sell my house, and move into a senior living community, you thought I was helpless. You thought I was a burden. She gestured around the workshop, to the tools, to the journal. But your father knew better. He knew exactly what kind of legacy to leave. Eleanor turned and walked away, leaving Ethan alone in the workshop, surrounded by his father's quiet, powerful legacy, the journal still clutched in his trembling hands. The story of Robert's unwavering love, Eleanor's resilience, and Ethan's shocking betrayal had come full circle. The truth finally was out. Eleanor's journey, beginning with the shock of betrayal, culminated in a profound discovery of love, foresight, and unyielding strength. Robert, her quiet, loving husband, had truly been a guardian angel, ensuring her future was not only secure but magnificent. This hidden inheritance, meticulously built over 3 decades, became the ultimate testament to his devotion, empowering Eleanor to reclaim her autonomy and confront her son's greed. Her story is a powerful reminder that true wealth lies not just in assets, but in the enduring bonds of love, the strength of resilience, and the courage to stand up for oneself against the most intimate forms of betrayal. Eleanor, now free, independent, and armed with a formidable legacy, was finally ready to live the life Robert had so lovingly planned for her, a life of peace, security, and boundless possibilities. Eleanor's journey began in the stark silence of her kitchen, shattered by Ethan's casual cruelty. Just weeks after Robert's death, her son had attempted to dismantle her life, starting with the Toyota, a symbol of Robert's reliable presence and her own dwindling independence. Ethan's dismissive words, "You need to be practical now that Dad's gone," were meant to strip her of autonomy, to make her reliant on his self-serving management of her finances. But in his arrogant haste, he overlooked the true depth of Robert's love and foresight. The revelation of Robert's hidden empire transformed Eleanor from a grieving widow, her voice once too high and thin, into a woman of formidable strength and purpose. She moved from clinging to faded wallpaper and cherished memories to embracing a powerful, tangible legacy. Ethan's attempt to control her ultimately led to his own humbling, as he realized he had been a tenant in his mother's own building, a pawn in a game far beyond his comprehension. Eleanor's story is a testament to enduring love, the quiet power of planning, and the triumphant reclamation of self in the face of betrayal. Robert's wisdom had not only secured her future, but had also given her the means to carve out her own destiny, stronger and more independent than ever before.